Admiral Vara Thaler stood on the command deck of the Celestine Wrath, the mightiest warship in the Ascendancy fleet, her thin, membranous wings quivering faintly in the still air. The glow from the massive tactical screen bathed her metallic sheen skin, highlighting the sharp features of a purebred Zereth warrior. Her 3 emerald eyes gleamed brightly, blinking in a slow, rhythmic pattern, a sign of satisfaction among her kind. Before her, the battle unfolded in Saturn's orbit, where humanity's final defensive line crumbled like fragile glass beneath the Ascendancy's overwhelming might. On the screen, humanity's puny ships, crude machines with dull metal hulls and smoke-spewing engines, disintegrated under the barrage of plasma cannons from the Ascendancy warships. A human destroyer exploded in silence, its debris twinkling like falling stars amid the endless dark of space. Other ships, panicked and breaking formation, began retreating toward Earth, leaving trails of smoke and faint engine glow in their wake. Vara tilted her head slightly, her wings folding tighter against her back, as if savoring a flawless performance. Another glorious day for the Ascendancy. Came the deep, steady voice of Commander Rin Solak beside her. A Corveth, his black, glossy chitin shell shimmered under the dim light, his 4 slender arms neatly crossed. The humans fought harder than I expected from such a primitive species, but their stubbornness has its limits. Vara nodded, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. 15 years of war, and at last we've broken their will. Their tactics once caught us off guard, small ambushes, reckless assaults regardless of numbers, but it was all futile flailing. Our fleet outnumbers theirs tenfold. Our technology surpasses theirs by millennia. This outcome was inevitable from the moment they refused to kneel. The command deck buzzed with the sounds of dozens of officers from the Ascendancy's 13 species. A Vethari officer with silver feathers darted across control panels, her delicate hands inputting data at blinding speed. A Draken engineer, his hulking form covered in volcanic, scaly skin, checked the plasma weapon systems, his heavy breaths echoing through his respirator mask. The Ascendancy had dominated the galaxy for 6,000 years, expanding its dominion across hundreds of star systems, bringing planets under its control, willingly or by force. Earth was a rare exception. When Ascendancy scout ships first detected the blue planet 75 years ago, they anticipated a swift surrender, as with countless other species. But humanity refused, and the war began. Admiral. A soft yet sharp voice interrupted Vara's thoughts. Dr. Kalia Vren, a Lyrian scientist with translucent skin revealing pulsing blue energy veins, approached from her observation station. Her large, lidless eyes gleamed with curiosity tinged with unease. We've just received reports from the left flank. Saturn's defensive line has completely collapsed. The human fleet is retreating to Earth at maximum speed. Vara turned, her 3 eyes locking onto Kalia. Good. That means they're out of options. No more defenses stand between us and their planet. Earth is now a ripe fruit, waiting for us to pluck. Kalia hesitated, her small hands tightening around a data tablet. I'm not sure it's that simple, Admiral. The signals from their retreating fleet, something's off. They're withdrawing too orderly, not like a panicked rout. I've analyzed data from past engagements. Every time we've cornered them, they've always had a backup plan. Commander Rin Solak snorted, his chitin clicking as he crossed his 4 arms over his chest. Kalia, you always see conspiracies in the simplest things. These are humans, a species that only learned to leave their atmosphere a few centuries ago. They lack the technology or intellect to challenge us. This is desperation, not strategy. Vara raised a hand, silencing Solak. She regarded Kalia, her voice lowering. Go on, Doctor. What do you see in the data? Kalia took a deep breath, her energy veins flickering faster. I don't have concrete proof, Admiral, but I've noticed a pattern. In 15 years of war, the humans have never committed their full forces to any single battle. They've always held something back, even when it meant defeat. And the ships we destroyed today, they're all outdated models. showing no signs of the advanced technology a spacefaring civilization should have after centuries of development. "What are you suggesting?" Vara asked, her tone now edged with doubt. "I'm suggesting," Kalia replied, her gaze unwavering, "that we might be underestimating them. They could have deliberately shown us what they wanted us to see, a weak, easily subdued civilization. But if they have something stronger, something they've kept hidden..." Salik laughed, a harsh, grating sound from his chitinous frame. "A secret fleet hiding in this solar system? We've scanned every planet, every moon, every asteroid in the past 15 years. If they had anything, we'd have found it by now." Vara didn't laugh. She turned back to the tactical screen, staring at the glowing dots representing the retreating human fleet. "Salik may be right," she said slowly, "but I didn't rise to this position by dismissing possibilities."
Kalia.
"Increase sensor sweep intensity. If there's anything unusual, even the faintest signal, I want to know immediately." Kalia nodded, returning to her station with a tense expression. The command deck settled back into the familiar rhythm of war, the beeps of machinery, the murmurs of officers, the low hum of the massive energy core powering the Celestine Wrath. Vara stepped to the railing, looking down at her crew. This was the largest fleet the Ascendancy had assembled in centuries, 7,000 warships, from nimble fighters to kilometer-long cruisers. An unstoppable force, forged through millennia of conquest. "Admiral," a comms officer called from behind. "We've just received confirmation from the right flank. The human command ship at Saturn has been destroyed. No signals remain from their defense forces." A cheer erupted across the command deck, rippling through the officers like a wave. Vara raised a hand for silence, though the corner of her mouth twitched upward, a rare smile. "Send a report to the Ascendancy Council," she ordered. "Tell them humanity has been defeated. We'll advance to Earth in 18 hours. Prepare landing protocols. I want this planet on its knees before their sun rises again." The officers bowed, their hands and claws moving swiftly across controls. Vara turned back to the screen, gazing at Earth's image, a tiny blue, at the solar system's heart. The war had dragged on too long, consumed too many resources, and she knew the Council was growing impatient. This would be her greatest triumph, a testament to her strategic genius and the Ascendancy's invincibility. But as she stared at that blue, a flicker of unease stirred in her mind, an instinct she couldn't explain. She shook her head, dismissing it. Humanity had no chance. They were a young, feeble species, no match for the might of 13 races that had ruled the galaxy for 6,000 years. This was just war's fatigue, she told herself. Victory was within reach. Millions of kilometers away, in a bunker buried deep beneath Earth's Andes Mountains, General Marcus Drace stood before a different tactical screen. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled, his angular face, marked by a faint scar on his left cheek, etched with lines from 15 relentless years of war. His sharp, resolute eyes tracked the glowing dots of the human fleet retreating from Saturn. Beside him, Colonel Lara Teff stood silent, her brown hair tied back tightly, her sturdy frame rigid, hands clasped behind her. Saturn's defense line collapsed exactly as planned, Lara said, her voice low but tinged with unease. The Ascendancy took the bait. They think we're breaking apart. Marcus nodded, eyes glued to the screen.
They've always thought that.
For 15 years, we've let them see a weak, submissive humanity, outdated ships, simple tactics. We lost battles we could have won, sacrificed ships we could have saved, all to maintain this facade. Lara turned to him, her eyes flickering with doubt. But the cost, General, millions of lives, hundreds of ships. If they'd known what we could do from the start, then the Ascendancy would have sent their full might against us immediately. Marcus cut in, his voice cold as steel. We couldn't have withstood their entire empire when the war began. We needed time to perfect the Specter Armada, time to convince them we weren't worth their all-out effort. And now, that time is up. He stepped to a security console, placing his calloused hand on the biometric scanner. A beep sounded, and the screen lit up with a simple message. Project Eclipse confirmed. Marcus hesitated for a fleeting moment, his finger hovering over the confirmation button. This was the plan humanity had prepared for centuries, a secret passed down through generations, hidden even from their brightest scientists. He pressed it. Send the signal to the Specter Armada, he ordered. Project Eclipse is now active. The Ascendancy will reach Earth's orbit in 36 hours. We need the Umber class ready before they arrive. Lara swallowed hard, her voice trembling slightly. Are we certain this is the only way? Sir, the price we've paid if this fails. It won't fail, a new voice interrupted from the bunker's entrance. Admiral Elena Voss stepped in, her white hair tied in a neat bun, contrasting her black uniform emblazoned with Earth's shadowed emblem. At 60, she bore the weariness of someone who'd seen too much loss, yet her eyes burned with unshakable resolve. The Specter Armada has been ready for decades, Lara. This isn't a gamble, it's our ace in the hole. Marcus nodded in greeting, a gesture of respect between two architects of this plan. Admiral Voss,
he said.
How's your fleet? Elena approached the screen, her keen eyes scanning the tactical map. 15 Umber-class ships, hidden in the Veil since the war began, each over 6 kilometers long. Equipped with spatial manipulation tech the Ascendancy can't even dream of. The crews have trained in the dark for 15 years, awaiting this moment. They're ready to fight, truly fight, after decades of simulations. Lara looked at Elena, her anxiety giving way to a spark of hope. And the Ascendancy suspects nothing? Nothing, Elena replied, a cold smile flickering across her lips. Our intel shows Vara Thaler preparing a victory ceremony on her ship. The Ascendancy believes they're witnessing our last stand, a chaotic, desperate retreat. They don't know we've led them exactly where we want them. Marcus turned back to the screen, watching the dots moving toward Earth. 15 years we've maintained this mask, he said, his voice dropping like a vow. We lost good people, ships we could have saved. But it was necessary. The Ascendancy couldn't know who we really are, couldn't know what we've kept hidden. And now, Elena finished, her voice sharp as a blade. They'll see why Earth stands alone among the stars, why we never begged to join their alliance, why we kept our true technology in the shadows. In the underground bunker beneath the Andes Mountains, the air hung heavy with the scent of metal and the low hum of ventilation systems. The pale blue glow from the tactical screen illuminated General Marcus Dre's face, accentuating the faint scar on his left cheek, a relic of a battle he never spoke of. He stood motionless, his hand resting on the security console, his piercing eyes tracking the blinking text on the display. Project Eclipse initiated. Beside him, Colonel Lara Teff gripped her hands tightly behind her back, her neatly tied brown hair trembling slightly as she took deep breaths to suppress her tension. The Specter Armada has received the signal. A young technician reported from the room's corner, his voice shaky yet striving for professionalism. They're powering up systems. The veil will dissolve in 10 minutes. Marcus nodded, his gaze unwavering from the screen. On the tactical map, glowing dots representing the human fleet continued their steady retreat from Saturn toward Earth. But at the solar system's edge, near Neptune's orbit, a region of space flickered with faint signals, the first hint of something the Ascendancy couldn't yet fathom. Good, he said, his voice deep and resolute. Ensure all communication channels are triple encrypted. The Ascendancy must not detect us until the Armada is ready. Lara turned to him, her eyes glinting with a mix of worry and determination. General, if we do this, there's no turning back. The Ascendancy will know who we are, truly are. We've sacrificed so much to keep this secret. If they survive this confrontation, they won't stop until they've eradicated us completely. Marcus met her gaze, his eyes cold as steel. They won't survive, Lara. Not with what we're about to unleash. For 15 years, we've let them believe they were fighting a second-rate civilization, outdated ships, inexperienced crews. But that was just the surface. The Specter Armada is our true strength. forged to end this war in a single strike. The bunker door slid open again, and Admiral Elena Voss strode in with commanding presence, her black uniform hugging her lean frame. Her white hair, tied in a tight bun, contrasted sharply with the shadowed Earth emblem on her chest, a symbol known to only a few hundred people on the planet. She paused beside Marcus, her eyes sweeping the screen before shifting to Lara. "Colonel Teff," she said, her voice cool, yet tinged with empathy. "If you're worried about the cost we've paid, remember it wasn't in vain. Every ship we lost, every life we sacrificed, was part of this deception. The Ascendancy had to believe they'd won, and they did." Lara swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "I understand, Admiral. But when the Specter Armada emerges, everything changes. Not just for the Ascendancy, but for us. The world will know the truth, that we've hidden them for centuries." Elena offered a faint, weary smile, sharp with resolve. "The world will forgive us when they see what we've saved them from. The Ascendancy isn't our only threat, Lara. They're merely an obstacle on our real path." Marcus raised an eyebrow, turning to Elena. "You mean the Shroud?" Elena nodded, her expression darkening. "They're moving. Monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge report growing spatial rifts. If we don't end this war swiftly, we'll face two enemies at once. And trust me, the Ascendancy is nothing compared to what the Shroud can do." Meanwhile, millions of kilometers from Earth, in a parallel dimension known as the Veil, 15 Umber-class super-dreadnoughts began to awaken. Captain Jiro Tan stood on the bridge of the Eclipse Sovereign, the flagship of the Specter Armada, his hands clasped firmly behind his back. His short black hair gleamed under the dim glow of the control panels, and his gray uniform, bearing the Umber-class insignia, clung to the solid frame of a man who'd spent a lifetime training in secrecy. Before him, the Eclipse Sovereign's crew moved with absolute precision, each member acutely aware that this moment was their purpose. "System status?" Jiro asked, his voice calm, yet carrying the weight of an unchallengeable command. "Space-time engines at 95% capacity." The operations officer, a young woman with bright, intense eyes, replied. "The Veil is disintegrating on schedule. We'll emerge into real space in 8 minutes." Jiro nodded. His eyes locked on the main screen, where a hazy image of the solar system began to materialize through the Veil's energy membrane. For 15 years, he and his crew had lived in this parallel dimension, a pocket of space crafted by technology humanity had developed millennia ago, technology they concealed even from their own people. The Umber-class ships weren't mere weapons, they were the pinnacle of human science, each stretching over 6 kilometers, their jet black hulls absorbing light. Armed with systems capable of manipulating space-time, each vessel held power enough to obliterate a planet, and today they would face the Ascendancy. "Signal the other ships," Jiro ordered. "Project Eclipse is active. Primary target, the Ascendancy command ships, with Celestine Wrath at the top of the list. Secondary targets, they're heavy cruisers. Minimize unnecessary casualties. But make the message clear, the Ascendancy has awakened something they cannot control." On the command deck of the Celestine Wrath, Admiral Vara Thaler remained at the railing, her thin wings trembling with each breath. The Ascendancy fleet, 7,000 warships stretching across space like a steel net, advanced toward Earth at full speed. Before her, the tactical screen showed the shrinking dots of the human fleet retreating, like insects fleeing a storm. "Admiral," Dr. Kalia Vren's urgent voice broke through from the observation station. "A signal from the solar system's edge. It's intensifying. I'm detecting clear space-time ripples. This isn't debris or a wrecked ship. Something massive is moving." Vara turned, her 3 eyes narrowing. "How massive?" Kalia hesitated, her energy veins pulsing wildly. "Based on sensor data, at least a few kilometers. Possibly larger. And not just one. I'm counting at least 10 distinct signatures, maybe more." Commander Rin Solik stepped forward, his forearms spreading in disbelief. 10 ships over a few kilometers? The humans don't have anything like that, Kalia. We crushed every significant vessel they had at Saturn. This must be a sensor glitch. But Vara didn't respond immediately. She moved to Kalia's station, her gaze fixed on the flickering data. The space-time ripples weren't random. They had structure, like the pulse of something alive, awakening. Increase scans, she commanded, her voice now laced with tension. And put the fleet on full alert. I want every ship combat ready now. Kalia nodded, her small hands darting across the controls. Admiral, if these are indeed ships, and I believe they are, they're not using any technology we've seen from the humans. These ripples suggest space-time manipulation. Something even the Ascendancy has only theorized. Solak snorted, his chitin clicking. Space-time manipulation? Kalia, you're talking about something we haven't achieved in 6,000 years. The humans couldn't. Silence, Solak. Vara snapped, her voice cutting like a blade. If Kalia's right, we might be facing something beyond our predictions. I won't take chances. Before Solak could argue, a shrill beep erupted from the comms station. Admiral, the comms officer shouted, his Draken face paling beneath its rough skin. We've just received a report from the Neptune orbit outpost. They've detected something emerging. They say space is tearing open, like massive rifts. Vara spun around, her three eyes widening. Put it on the main screen. Now. The tactical display shifted, and what appeared silenced the entire command deck. At the solar system's edge, space seemed to unravel. Black rifts tore open like gashes in fabric, revealing a swirling darkness within, not the usual void of space, but something deeper, stranger. And from those rifts, colossal shapes began to emerge. First came a single ship, no, a superdreadnought, over 6 kilometers long, its jet-black hull not reflecting light, but devouring it. Its lines were sharp and cold, with massive energy cannons lining its sides, emitting a faint purple glow. Then a second appeared, then a third, then a fourth, 15 in total, each dwarfing any warship in the Ascendancy fleet. They moved with eerie precision, forming a perfect enveloping formation around Vara's forces. What are they? Solak whispered, his forearms trembling for the first time in 15 years of war. Kalia stepped back from her station, her lidless eyes wide with awe and fear. That's the Specter Armada. I read about it in human legends, a ghost fleet hidden to protect them in their darkest hour. But I thought it was just myth. Vara gripped the railing, her claws scraping metal. Not myth, she said, her voice now a mix of fury and dread. Reality. And we've just walked into their trap. On the bridge of the Eclipse Sovereign, Jiro Tan stood tall, his eyes glinting with cold determination. The veil has fully dissolved, the operations officer reported. We've emerged into real space. The Ascendancy fleet is within range. Jiro nodded, his fist tightening. Activate weapon systems. Prepare to broadcast to the Celestine Wrath. They need to know the game is over on our terms. As the energy cannons on the 15 Umber-class ships began to hum with unimaginable power, Jiro stared at the screen, where the Ascendancy fleet scrambled to adjust formation. 15 years of preparation, centuries of secrecy, and now the moment of truth had arrived. The Specter Armada had awakened, and the Ascendancy would soon learn they weren't the only predators in this galaxy. The command deck of the Celestine Wrath thrummed with barely contained chaos. The shrill beeps of sensor stations mingled with the hushed, frantic whispers of officers, while Admiral Vara Thaler stood motionless before the massive tactical screen. Her thin, membranous wings vibrated violently, a rare reaction for a Zereth, evidence of extreme tension. Her 3 emerald eyes fixed on the image of the 15 Umber-class superdreadnoughts that had emerged from spatial rifts, their perfect enveloping formation resembling a steel noose tightening around the Ascendancy fleet. Admiral. Dr. Kalia Vren's voice cut through from the observation station, sharp and urgent. The petite Lyrian scientist nearly leapt from her seat, her slender hands racing across the control panel, the blue energy veins on her translucent skin pulsing wildly. I've finished analyzing the signals from those ships. They're not using any technology we've recorded from the humans. No ion drives, no plasma cores. This is something entirely different. I'm detecting traces of space-time energy, like what we've only experimented with in theory. Vara turned, her claws gripping the railing so tightly it creaked. What do you mean, Kalia? The humans can't have technology like that. We've scanned this solar system hundreds of times over 15 years. If they had something that massive, we'd have found it long ago. Kalia shook her head, her lidless eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. No, Admiral, we couldn't have detected it. These signals suggest they've hidden those ships in a parallel spatial dimension, something the Ascendancy has only dreamed of achieving. They call it the Veil in their legends. I thought it was mere folklore, but this data, it matches perfectly. Commander Rin Solak stepped forward, his forearms spreading in disbelief. His black, glossy chitin shell glinted under the dim light, but his voice now carried a tremor he couldn't mask. Kalia, are you saying the humans, a species that barely learned to fly into space a few centuries ago, built a fleet surpassing our technology? That's impossible. We destroyed everything they had at Saturn. This must be a trick, maybe holographic projections to intimidate us. Vara didn't respond immediately. She turned back to the screen, staring at the colossal black ships hovering in space. They didn't move like conventional vessels, no exhaust, no engine glow, just an eerie silence, as if they were true phantoms. Each ship stretched over 6 kilometers, their massive energy cannons lining their hulls, emitting a faint, menacing purple glow. A chill ran down her spine, an instinct she couldn't shake. If this is a trick, she said slowly, her voice dropping like a warning, it's the most sophisticated one I've ever seen. Kalia, what are these ships capable of? Kalia swallowed hard, her trembling hands pulling up data on a secondary display. Based on the energy they're emitting, I estimate each ship could wield power equivalent to one of our heavy dreadnoughts, multiplied hundreds of times. If they're truly manipulating space-time, they could produce effects we can't defend against, like instantaneous teleportation or even warping space to neutralize our weapons. Solak snorted, though the sound lacked its usual confidence. So, what do you suggest, Kalia? Retreat because of a few ships we don't fully understand? We have 7,000 warships, they have 15. No matter how advanced their tech, numbers will overwhelm them. Vara raised a hand, silencing him. Enough, she said, her voice cutting like a blade. I don't care how many ships they have or what technology they wield. The Ascendancy doesn't retreat from an unproven threat. But I'm not foolish enough to charge in unprepared. Kalia, enhance sensor sweeps. I want to know exactly what those ships are. Solak, order the fleet into defensive formation. If this is a trap, I won't let them catch us easily. Before Solak could comply, a piercing beep erupted from the comms station. Admiral. The comms officer shouted, his Draken face paling beneath its rough scales. We've just received a transmission from their lead ship, audio and visual. They're requesting to speak with the fleet commander. Vara spun around, her 3 eyes narrowing. Put it on the main screen, she ordered, her voice now a blend of curiosity and fury. The tactical display shifted, revealing a human man. Captain Jiro Tan stood on the bridge of the Eclipse Sovereign, his short black hair stark against his gray uniform bearing the Umber-class insignia. His sharp, cold eyes exuded the confidence of someone who'd awaited this moment for 15 years. Behind him, his crew moved with flawless precision, showing no trace of panic or hesitation. Ascendancy fleet, Jiro said, his voice deep and clear, resonating through the Celestine Wrath's command deck like a pronouncement of judgment. I am Captain Jiro Tan, commander of the Specter Armada, Earth Defense Force. You ventured too far into our solar system. I demand you lower your weapons and cease all hostile actions immediately. The command deck fell into a deathly silence. Solak's jaw dropped, his forearms hanging limp in shock. Kalia stepped back, her lidless eyes widening as if she couldn't believe what she saw. But Vara, didn't flinch. She stepped toward the screen, her thin wings spreading in defiance, her three eyes locking onto Jiro. "I am Admiral Vara Thaler of the Grand Ascendancy Fleet," she said, her voice icy. "I do not recognize your authority, human. Your fleet has been defeated. What I saw at Saturn is proof enough. Whatever this game is, I will not be cowed by a handful of ships." Jiro tilted his head slightly, a cold smile flickering across his lips. "Admiral Thaler, what you saw at Saturn was merely our outer shell, a defensive force designed to conceal Earth's true strength. The ships you destroyed were expendable, built to convince you we were weak. The Specter Armada is our real answer, and now you are surrounded." To underscore his words, the Celestine Wrath's tactical screen flared as more signals appeared. The Umber-class ships moved with unimaginable speed, forming a perfect three-dimensional ring around the Ascendancy fleet. Each vessel emitted a faint energy field, distorting the space around them like ripples on water. Vara gripped the railing, her claws leaving deep gouges in the metal. "You're bluffing," she growled. "The Ascendancy has 7,000 warships, you have 15. No matter how advanced your technology, you cannot withstand our might." Jiro didn't reply immediately. He raised a hand, signaling an officer behind him. "Admiral, I'm not here to debate. I'm here to offer a choice. Lower your weapons and retreat to Ascendancy space, or face the consequences. To prove this isn't an empty threat, observe." The main screen switched to a feed from a distance sensor. One of the Umber-class ships, the Shadow Requiem, pivoted slightly in space, its hull-mounted energy cannons glowing with brilliant purple light. A thin beam of energy shot out, moving so fast it was nearly invisible. It struck a small icy moonlet near Neptune, a harmless rock no larger than an Ascendancy cruiser. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moonlet shuddered violently before disintegrating into billions of glittering dust particles, without a sound, without a single large fragment remaining. The Celestine Wrath's command deck plunged into absolute silence. Solak staggered back, his forearms trembling uncontrollably. Kalia whispered, barely audible, "They just disintegrated matter at the atomic level." Vara turned back to Jiro, her three eyes now blazing with anger and fear. "What weapon is that?" she demanded, her voice quivering despite her efforts to hide it. "This is only our lowest setting," Jiro replied, his tone calm to the point of chilling. "We don't want bloodshed, Admiral. But we will protect our planet. 15 years ago, the Ascendancy entered this solar system and demanded our submission. We chose to watch you, to learn how you operate. We saw you conquer other worlds, strip their resources, erase their cultures. We decided that fate wasn't for Earth." Vara clenched her teeth, her claws digging deeper into the railing. "You think a few ships can stop us? The Ascendancy has conquered hundreds of worlds. You're not the first to defy us." Jiro smiled, this time a smile devoid of warmth. "We're not just another world, Admiral. We are the silent guardians of this galaxy, and you've just crossed our final line. I'll give you 10 minutes to lower your weapons. If not, the Specter Armada will act." The transmission cut off, the screen reverting to the image of the Ascendancy fleet encircled by the colossal black ships. Vara stood frozen, her breathing heavier than ever. "Solak," she finally said, her voice now icy. "Order the fleet to prepare for combat. I don't believe this is all they have. If they want war, we'll show them the Ascendancy's true power." Solak nodded, though his eyes betrayed doubt. "But Admiral, if they really—" "I said prepare for combat," Vara roared, her wings flaring in rage. "The Ascendancy kneels to no one, especially not humans." Kalia shrank back, her hands trembling as she studied the sensor data. "Admiral," she whispered, her voice nearly lost amid the command deck's clamor, "I don't think they're bluffing. If we attack, we might not survive this day." But Vara didn't hear. She turned back to the screen, staring at the Umber-class ships with a gaze both defiant and desperate. On the bridge of the Eclipse Sovereign, Jiro Tan settled into the command chair, his hands resting lightly on the controls. They've made their choice, he said, his voice dropping like a verdict. Ready the weapons. If they don't surrender in 10 minutes, we'll show them why Earth never bows. The crew nodded, and the energy cannons on the 15 Umber-class ships began to glow with radiant purple light, poised to turn Jiro's warning into reality. The confrontation had begun, and the Ascendancy still didn't grasp what they were facing. On the command deck of the Celestine Wrath, the air was thick with tension and the clamor of chaos. Admiral Vara Thaler stood before the tactical screen, her thin, membranous wings spread wide in a stance of both defiance and desperation. Her 3 emerald eyes blazed with fierce light, reflecting the image of the 15 Umber-class superdreadnoughts encircling the Ascendancy fleet. The 10-minute ultimatum from Captain Jiro Tan ticked down rapidly, and she had no intention of yielding. "Admiral," Commander Rin Solak said, his voice trembling despite his attempt at composure. His 4 arms clenched together, his black, glossy chitin shell quivering with each breath. "We have 3 minutes left. If they're not bluffing, we need to reconsider." "There's nothing to reconsider." Vara cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. "The Ascendancy doesn't surrender to threats, especially not from a species we've crushed hundreds of times over 15 years. They have 15 ships, we have 7,000. Numbers will shatter them, no matter how advanced their technology." Dr. Kalia Vren stood at the observation station, her small hands shaking as she studied the sensor data. The blue energy veins on her translucent skin pulsed frantically, betraying the panic she couldn't conceal. "Admiral, please listen to me," she pleaded, her tone urgent. "Those ships aren't just technologically superior, they have capabilities we can't counter. I'm detecting a surge in their energy output. They're activating weapons." Vara turned, her 3 eyes narrowing. "What kind of weapons?" Kalia swallowed hard, pulling up data on a secondary display. "I'm not certain, but this energy, it's as if they're bending space-time. If they strike, we might not just lose ships, we could lose the entire fleet." Solak stepped forward, his 4 arms spreading in disbelief. "Kalia, you're exaggerating. We have energy shields, plasma cannons, heavy cruisers, they can't." Before Solak could finish, a shrill beep erupted from the comms station. "Admiral," the comms officer shouted, his Draken face paling beneath its rugged scales. "The deadline's up. They're ships, they're moving." Vara spun around, her claws raking the railing. "Open the fleet-wide channel," she commanded. "All ships, prepare for combat. Target those vessels. I want them obliterated before they fire a single shot." Her order rippled through the fleet, and the Ascendancy's 7,000 warships sprang into action. Small fighters darted forward like swarms of bees, while massive cruisers pivoted their plasma cannons toward the Specter Armada. Energy shields flared to life, encasing the fleet in a shimmering blue glow. The space between Neptune and Uranus lit up with the radiance of thousands of activated weapons, poised to unleash a barrage capable of leveling a planet. On the bridge of the Eclipse Sovereign, Captain Jiro Tan sat in the command chair, his sharp eyes locked on the tactical screen. His crew moved with flawless precision, showing no hint of panic or doubt. "They've refused," he said, his voice low and cold. "Activate weapon systems. Primary target, Celestine Wrath. Use minimal settings. I want them to survive and grasp the message." "Lowest settings primed," the weapons officer reported, her hands gliding swiftly over the controls. "Space-time cannons will fire in 10 seconds." Jiro nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Engage." In real space, the 15 Umber-class ships ignited with radiant purple light. The massive cannons along their hulls hummed, emitting energy ripples that distorted the surrounding space. From the Eclipse Sovereign, a thin beam of energy lanced out, streaking toward the Celestine Wrath. The Ascendancy fleet retaliated instantly. Thousands of plasma bolts and kinetic rounds surged toward the Specter Armada, forming a firestorm potent enough to annihilate any foe. But as the firestorm neared the Umber-class ships, the unthinkable occurred. Instead of striking shields or hulls, The plasma bolts and projectiles vanished, swallowed into nothingness just short of their targets. An invisible energy field enveloped the Specter Armada, absorbing every attack without a trace. On the Celestine Wrath, Vara shouted, "What's happening?" "Report." Kalia recoiled from her station, her lidless eyes wide with horror. They're absorbing our energy. Their space-time field isn't just blocking attacks, it's storing the energy. Before Vara could react, the beam from the Eclipse Sovereign struck the Celestine Wrath. There was no explosion, no violent shudder, just a faint purple glow sweeping across the ship. In an instant, the Celestine Wrath's energy shields flickered and died. Weapon systems shut down. Engines whined and fell silent. The colossal vessel, the pride of the Ascendancy, drifted helplessly, a dead hunk of metal in space. Status. Vara roared, her wings vibrating fiercely. Shields at 0, weapons offline, engines at 10% capacity, the chief Draken engineer reported, his voice shaking. "We're completely disabled." Vara turned back to the screen. But the sight before her was even more horrifying. The other Umber-class ships sprang into action, each selecting targets with lethal precision. From the Shadow Requiem, a similar beam swept across an Ascendancy heavy cruiser. The ship didn't explode. It disintegrated, crumbling into billions of dust particles in silence, as if it had never existed. Another vessel, the Void Harbinger, unleashed a spherical energy field, washing over hundreds of Ascendancy fighters. The small craft instantly ceased functioning, drifting like corpses in the void. On the Celestine Wrath's tactical screen, the glowing dots representing the Ascendancy fleet began vanishing, dozens, then hundreds per minute. In under 5 minutes, over 2,000 warships had been disabled or destroyed, without a single explosion, without a chance to fight back. "We have to retreat," Solak yelled, his 4 arms flailing in panic. "Admiral, give the order. We can't withstand this." Vara stood rooted, her claws gouging the railing. "Retreat," she snarled. "The Ascendancy doesn't flee." But before she could order a counterattack, an eerie screech sounded from Kalia's observation station. "Admiral," she cried, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "Something else. Space is tearing open again. It's not from the Specter Armada. It's coming from somewhere else." Vara whirled, her 3 eyes widening. On the main screen, a massive spatial rift appeared between the Ascendancy fleet and the Specter Armada. Not the black of the veil, but a deep, swirling darkness laced with strange red streaks. From the rift, indistinct shapes emerged, not ships, but shadowy entities with fluid, shifting forms, like living clouds radiating black energy that warped the space around them. On the Eclipse Sovereign, Jiro Tan leapt from his chair, his eyes narrowing. "The Shroud," he whispered, his voice dropping with rare tension. "They're here sooner than expected." "Captain," the sensor officer shouted. "They're attacking both us and the Ascendancy." From the rift, dozens of Shroud entities surged forth, each trailing tendrils of black energy. One tendril wrapped around a nearby Ascendancy cruiser. The ship shuddered, its metal hull melting like wax under sunlight. Another entity lunged at the Shadow Requiem, but the Umber-class ship's energy field flared, repelling the assault in a blinding purple flash. On the Celestine Wrath, Vara staggered back, her wings folding for the first time in 15 years of war. "What are they?" she asked, her voice now a mere whisper. Kalia turned to her, her lidless eyes wide with dread. "I don't know, Admiral, but they're not human. Their energy, it's unlike anything in our database. They're consuming reality itself." Before Vara could reply, a Shroud tendril lunged at the Celestine Wrath. The ship jolted violently, lights on the command deck flickering and dying. A horrific screech echoed, as if space itself were being torn apart. "Report," Vara shouted, but no one answered. Her crew collapsed, clutching their heads in agony as the Shroud's black energy invaded their minds. On the Eclipse Sovereign, Jiro Tan clenched his fists, his eyes fixed on the screen. Shift targets, he ordered. Prioritize the Shroud. Protect the Ascendancy fleet if possible. They don't know what they're facing. Maximum settings primed, the weapons officer reported. Space-time cannons will fire in 5 seconds. Jiro nodded, his voice cold as ice. Engage. From the 15 Umber-class ships, radiant purple beams erupted, not thin rays now, but colossal pillars of light. One pillar swept through the Shroud entities, disintegrating them in shrieks of torment. Another streaked near the Celestine Wrath, repelling the black tendril before it could rip the ship apart. But even with the Specter Armada's might, the Shroud kept pouring from the rift, growing in number, an unstoppable tide of darkness. On the Celestine Wrath, light gradually returned as the Shroud tendril was driven back. Vara rose from the floor, her wings trembling. "We were alive," she whispered, staring at the screen where the Specter Armada battled the shadowy entities. Kalia stood, her hands shaking as she checked the data. "Admiral, the humans just saved us. But those things, they're still coming. We can't fight them alone." Vara turned back to the screen, gazing at the Specter Armada with eyes both astonished and bitter. She realized the war with humanity was over, but a greater threat had just begun. 3 days after the catastrophic battle near Neptune's orbit, Admiral Vara Thaler stood by the observation window of an orbital station circling Earth, her thin, membranous wings drooping in unprecedented exhaustion. Her metallic-sheened skin reflected the faint blue glow of the planet below, but her 3 emerald eyes were dulled, as if every ounce of her pride had been drained in the clash with the Specter Armada and the Shroud. Beside her, Commander Rin Solak and Dr. Kalia Vren stood in silence, their gazes also fixed on Earth, a world they'd once seen as easy prey, now revealed as the heart of a mystery far beyond the Ascendancy's comprehension. From this vantage, they could clearly see the 15 Umber-class superdreadnoughts of the Specter Armada patrolling Earth's orbit. The colossal jet-black ships, each over 6 kilometers long, moved with an eerie silence, their hulls absorbing sunlight rather than reflecting it. They were no longer a threat to the Ascendancy, not after they'd saved the Celestine Wrath and hundreds of other warships from the Shroud's destruction. Yet their presence was a wordless reminder. Humanity was not the feeble foe the Ascendancy had believed. "I still don't understand how they hid those things," Solak said, his voice low and hoarse, his 4 arms folded tightly across his chest. His black, glossy chitin shell, now marred with scratches from the battle he'd survived, gleamed faintly. "We scanned this solar system hundreds of times over 15 years. No signs, no signals suggested they had anything like that." Kalia turned to him, her lidless eyes glinting with curiosity tinged with reverence. "The veil," she replied, the blue energy veins on her skin pulsing slowly. "They concealed them in a parallel dimension, a technology we've only theorized about. Those ships aren't just weapons, Solak. They're proof that humanity has advanced far beyond what we imagined." Vara said nothing, her eyes locked on Earth. In her mind, images of the battle swirled. The disintegration of thousands of Ascendancy ships under the Specter Armada's might, followed by the Shroud's arrival, shadowy entities with incomprehensible power. Of the 7,000 warships she'd brought to the solar system, fewer than 800 remained, most saved by human intervention. She, one of the Ascendancy's greatest admirals, had led her fleet into an unprecedented defeat, and now she stood here, not as a conqueror, but as a prisoner treated with unexpected respect. The observation station's door slid open, and a human officer entered, bowing slightly. He wore a gray uniform with the Umber-class insignia, his sturdy frame and steady voice exuding calm authority. "The Council is ready to receive you," he said. "Please follow me." Vara nodded, straightening despite her folded wings. Solak and Kalia followed, their footsteps echoing on the station's metal floor. They were led into a large circular chamber, where a crescent-shaped conference table stretched before them. Seated around it were 12 humans, each in distinct uniforms representing Earth's military and governmental branches. At the center stood Admiral Elena Voss, her white hair tied in a neat bun, contrasting her black uniform with Earth's shadowed emblem. Her eyes, though weary, burned with commanding resolve. Admiral Vara Thaler, Commander Rin Solek, Dr. Kalia Vren, Elena said, her voice cool yet respectful. Please take a seat. They sat, and Vara noticed something odd about the room. The far wall wasn't typical metal or glass. It was transparent. But instead of showing space or Earth, it displayed a bizarre scene, a swirling darkness laced with strange red streaks, where vague shapes moved like ghosts. She tilted her head, her claws tightening on the chair's armrests. What is that? She asked, unable to suppress her curiosity. Elena glanced at the wall, her expression darkening. That's the shroud, she replied. The entities you encountered near Neptune. They come from another dimension, and they've been trying to breach our reality for over 1,000 years. This is a live feed from our defensive perimeter at the galaxy's edge, where we fight to hold them back. Solek leaned forward, his forearms spreading in disbelief. You expect us to believe humanity has been quietly protecting the galaxy from that? While we conquered hundreds of worlds, what? You stood in the shadows playing heroes. An older man beside Elena spoke, his voice deep and firm. He wore a dark blue uniform with a different insignia, his eyes reflecting decades of experience. I'm General Marcus Drace, commander of Earth's extra-dimensional defense force, he said. What you see is the truth. That boundary you're looking at is all that stands between this galaxy and annihilation. We've held it for 10 centuries. Vara turned to Elena, her 3 eyes narrowing. If this is true, why hide it? Why not warn the galaxy, seek allies?
Elena sighed faintly.
A sound of exhaustion tempered by resolve. We tried, Admiral. 800 years ago, when we first detected the shroud through space-time experiments, we contacted an advanced civilization, the Thalaran. We shared our technology, hoping for their aid. But they saw our power, space-time weapons, ships like the Umber class, and they feared us. They attacked, forcing us to defend ourselves. Marcus picked up, his voice lowering like a warning. The Thalaran no longer exist. Not because we wanted to destroy them, but because they left us no choice. After that disaster, we decided the best way to protect the galaxy was in silence. We grew in the shadows, becoming silent guardians, ensuring no one knew our true strength. Kalia leaned forward, her lidless eyes gleaming with intense curiosity. So, when the Ascendancy arrived in this solar system 75 years ago, you already knew about the shroud.
Elena nodded.
We were mid-battle with them when your scout ships appeared. We had to quickly hide the Specter Armada, crafting a facade of a weak civilization so you wouldn't see us as a threat. If you'd known the truth from the start, you might have attacked with full force, and we'd have had to wipe out the Ascendancy entirely. Vara gritted her teeth, her claws scraping the armrests. And instead, you let us attack bit by bit, sacrificing millions of lives to preserve this secret. We didn't want war with you, Marcus replied, his eyes meeting hers squarely. But you gave us no choice. The Ascendancy arrived demanding our submission. We chose to observe, to wait, to prepare. You started this war, but now it must end. A hologram flickered to life above the table, displaying a 3D galactic map. Red dots blinked along the outer rim, dozens of them, each marking a spatial rift where the shroud struck. These are the current incursion points, Marcus explained. The Specter Armada and our defense platforms hold them back, but the frequency and strength of the attacks are rising. Our war with the Ascendancy stretched our resources thin, and now the shroud is exploiting that. Solek snorted, though the sound lacked conviction. So, what do you want from us? You crushed our fleet, saved us from those things, and now what? You expect us to kneel in gratitude.
Elena met Vara's gaze, unflinching.
We want your help, Admiral. The shroud doesn't distinguish between Ascendancy or humanity. It will devour everything if it breaches the perimeter. Our scientists predict a major assault within 5 years. One even the Specter Armada can't stop alone. We need allies, not enemies. Vara laughed bitterly, her wings quivering with resentment. You want the Ascendancy to assist you? After you destroyed thousands of our ships, humiliated us before the galaxy? The Council will never agree to this. A new voice emerged from the doorway. Soft yet heavy with centuries of weight. Elder Zanara, an aged Vethari with silver feathers and clouded eyes, stepped into the room. She was a senior Ascendancy advisor, often ignored by Vara for her outdated counsel. But now, Zanara's presence silenced the chamber. The Council may not agree, Vara, she said, her voice steady and deep, but they'll have to. I've seen the Ascendancy conquer hundreds of worlds in 6,000 years, but I've never witnessed a threat like the Shroud. If we don't join humanity, we'll have no galaxy left to rule. Vara turned to Zanara, her 3 eyes narrowing. You're saying we should bow to the humans? I'm saying we should survive, Zanara replied, her clouded eyes meeting Vara's. Pride led us to this defeat. Don't let it destroy us entirely. Elena rose, stepping to the transparent wall, where the Shroud's image still swirled. We're not asking you to kneel, she said. We're asking you to stand with us. The Ascendancy has 13 core worlds, hundreds of colonies, shipyards, and resources we can't match. If we combine the Specter Armada's strength with your production capacity, we could build a real defense against the Shroud. Marcus added, his voice ringing like a call to arms. We're offering a choice, Admiral. Take the truth about Earth and the Shroud back to the Ascendancy. Help us prepare the galaxy for what's coming. Or we'll find others, but time is running out. Vara stood, joining Elena at the transparent wall. She stared into the swirling darkness, where a massive Shroud entity pressed against the boundary, making it tremble yet hold firm. A few Umber-class ships moved into position, firing purple energy pillars to drive it back. What are they? She asked, her voice a whisper. Marcus stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the Shroud. We don't know exactly. They're not matter or energy as we understand. They exist in an in-between state, feeding on the energy of life. What you see is how our sensors interpret their presence. But we know this. If they break through, nothing can stop them. Vara turned back to the table, her gaze meeting Elena's. If I take this message to the Ascendancy, I can't guarantee they'll believe it. We've seen ourselves as the galaxy's dominant force for 6,000 years. Admitting we've been protected by a species we tried to conquer, it'll shatter our pride. Elena smiled faintly, the first hint of warmth in their meeting. Pride is a luxury none of us can afford anymore, Admiral. The Shroud cares nothing for politics or history. It will erase everything, regardless. Vara fell silent for a long moment, then nodded. I'll bring your message to the Council. I can't promise they'll agree, but I'll do all I can to convince them. Elena nodded back, her eyes glinting with respect. That's all we ask. In the meantime, we've prepared detailed data on the Shroud for you to study on your journey back. Your surviving ships have been repaired and resupplied. And as a gesture of goodwill, she glanced at Marcus. We'll send 2 Umber-class ships to escort you to Ascendancy space. They'll remain there as both protection and proof of what we've told you. As the meeting ended, Kalia approached Elena, her voice soft yet brimming with curiosity. Admiral Voss, may I ask a personal question? Elena nodded, her gaze softening. Of course. How long have you fought the Shroud?
Kalia asked.
A shadow crossed Elena's face. I've commanded the Specter Armada for 40 years. My grandfather led it before me, and his grandmother before him. We're born into this war, Dr. Vren. Every human on Earth knows our highest purpose is to stand guard at reality's edge. Kalia stared at her, her eyes wide with awe. And you've done it alone all this time? Until now, Elena replied, a faint smile curving her lips. Perhaps that's about to change. As they left the chamber, Vara glanced back at the transparent wall one last time. She saw a massive Shroud entity press against the boundary, and an Umber-class ship fire an energy pillar to repel it. She understood the galaxy stood on a precipice, and humanity, the species she'd once scorned, might be its only hope for survival. On the journey back to the Celestine Wrath, Vara remained silent, her mind reeling with what she'd witnessed. The Ascendancy had been wrong, not just about humanity, but about their own place in the universe. And now, she knew the real war was just beginning.